But we have updates now on the Trump indictment. So as we reported at length last week, former President Donald Trump was indicted in New York City in connection with hush money payments to an adult film actress called Stormy Daniels. On Tuesday, he became the first U.S. president in history to be arrested and arraigned. Trump was fingerprinted and processed ahead of his arraignment. CBS News reported that Trump pled not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Those 34 counts were all in relation to the same action, separate instances of committing a crime around the same thing. The indictment was unsealed in a proceeding before Judge Juan Merchan in criminal court in Manhattan. Trump was flanked by his lawyers inside the courtroom as prosecutors outlined their case, alleging he made covert and illegal payments to affect the 2016 election.
He violated New York election law, makes it a crime to conspire to vote a candidacy by unlawful means. The $130,000 wire payment exceeded federal campaign contribution cap, and the false statements in AMI's books violated New York law. That is why Mr. Trump made false statements.
Trump faces a maximum of 4 years in prison for each of those counts if convicted. Prosecutor Chris Conroy told the court that Trump engaged in a legal conspiracy to aid his campaign and undermine the election. The statements of facts compiled by prosecutors in conjunction with the indictment said that Trump, quote, repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election. It outlined 3 people who received hush money payments: adult film star Stormy Daniels, Playboy model Karen McDonald, and former Trump Tower doorman who had claimed to have a story about a child Trump had out of wedlock, a love child, while he was married to another woman. Daniels was paid $130,000 by former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, while McDowell and the doorman were paid $150,000 and $30,000 respectively by AMI, the publisher of the National Enquirer. As we've reported previously, and some stuff that you should know, the AMI, this AMI scheme was basically a catch and kill story. So what they would do is they would find any story that was related to Trump that might paint him in a bad light, pay the person for that story, put them under a non-disclosure agreement, offer them large sums of money, and then never publish the story. So they bought exclusive rights to the story, gave them money, never published the story. I don't think this should be legal. If you have negative information about any politician, it should come out. You shouldn't be able to pay for that story and have it just disappear. That's not currently the law. So that's not what Trump's being charged with here. What he's being charged with is basically doing this and lying about it in an effort to make the public unaware of it. And since that is influencing political stuff, that raised his misdemeanor counts of the falsifying business records to a felony. Continuing on, the indictment said the falsified records Trump signed off on were all made in 2017 when he was president. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said that the false statements were, quote, made to cover up other crimes, including violations of New York election law and federal campaign finance limits. Conroy also told the judge that prosecutors were very concerned about Trump's inflammatory social media posts about Bragg, other prosecutors, and the judge, saying that it could have an impact on jury and witnesses. If you didn't know, Trump was calling these judges anti-Trump, that they are entirely like bad people and they need to be held accountable and this is a travesty to our country, that sort of stuff. Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, told the judge that his client is frustrated and upset and was simply exercising his First Amendment rights. You know, that's true, but I mean, with power comes responsibility, and Trump is not adhering to any of the things that are responsible. But the judge said he was unconvinced that Trump's language was just frustration. He said the defense team should tell Trump to refrain from making statements that are likely to incite violence or civil unrest. acknowledging that Trump's words have a ton of weight. He told prosecutors to do the same with their witnesses. So we could see possibly an injunction being made, a gag order of some sort, to hold anybody accountable to make statements that are inflammatory, inciting violence, generally talking, defamatory statements about the judge, those kind of things to come up from this case, which should happen, honestly. Hundreds of pro and anti-Trump demonstrators gathered in small parks from the courthouse ahead of the scheduled appearance. Protesters were outnumbered by the mass of international news media that descended on the area around the courthouse, including reporters from Brazil, Germany, France, Finland, and Sweden. The judge is said to have received dozens of death threats and threats of violence in recent days. Similar threats have been received by District Attorney Alvin Bragg and other people involved with this case. Because apparently that's just what we do in this country. If something happens to a political person we're going to threaten violence. Because we are violent people. And that's what we do. After returning to Mar-a-Lago, the president gave a post-arraignment speech, as reported by the Palm Beach Post. He checklisted American carnage issues like the chaotic military withdrawal from Afghanistan and choking inflation. And he rattled off long-standing grievances about the record-setting 2 impeachments as president. Trump also had plenty of over-the-top assessments of current events, concluding that the country is going to hell. Now, this is a thing that a lot of people are pushing in right-wing media, that we are a nation of decline. You have seen me posting on social media. You have seen that I have said explicitly that it always seems to be funny that whenever a Democrat is in office, Republicans always lament, oh no, we're losing the country. This isn't the country I've lived in anymore. And whenever a Republican is in office, no matter how milquetoast that person is, a lot of liberals and leftists say the same thing. Have some fucking have some perspective, please. People, please. Hey, Tam, thanks for joining the stream. However, the bulk of the speech was aimed at attacking the investigators themselves. And despite the clear warning from the judge regarding rhetoric, the former president continued his attacks on the judge's wife, and even the judge's daughter. He called Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg a criminal and labeled both New York Attorney General Tish James and Atlanta Area District Attorney Fani Willis a racist. And he said Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith was a radical left lunatic. Yeah, well, two black people representing Atlanta are racist because they're going after Trump. That's how egotistical this person is. Can you believe he was president? That's fucking wild. We are in truly the worst of timelines. And yeah, of course, anybody that goes after him is a radical leftist. Okay, there's some progressive prosecutors, some progressive DAs. I don't know if any of them are radical. So, might have to look up who this Jack Smith is later. And as we saw in last week's coverage, many MAGA-supporting members of Congress have publicly spoken in defense of the former president, once again failing to take the opportunity to unhitch their party from Trump. The Atlantic's Peter Wenner, a former speechwriter for George W. Bush, said it this way, quote, "In the past, wondering just how far a party would go in defense of its leader was a matter of speculation. But Trump has moved this question from the realm of speculation to the realm of reality. The GOP has hitched its wagon to Trump, and he is leading them to places even they never imagined. A grotesque man presides over a grotesque party." End quote. Yeah, so I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The case that we are seeing in New York isn't, when I say strongest of cases, that doesn't mean that the merits of the case aren't good. Doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of evidence that this has happened. It just means it's not like that, let's get them, like, yes, let's go, let's do it, this is happening level of a case. And that's because a lot of people just aren't going to care that a man paid off a mistress to keep her quiet. And at the end of the day, that's what this case was about. Should that have happened? Is that political meddling? No, it shouldn't have happened. Yes, it can be political meddling, but the majority of people are just not going to care, in my opinion. That said, I still think he should be held accountable, just like any other politician that breaks the law, and falsifying business records, especially in an area such as New York, where they are the financial capital of almost the entire world, rest. And so we need to have the accountability there. The more stringent cases, the ones that are happening in Georgia, which is where Trump called them, the prosecutors going after him, potentially there, racist, is the case that has more oomph to it. That is the case that is dealing with his phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State in order to find another 12,701 or so votes. You know, one more than President Biden had, in order to cinch the election for Trump in Georgia and stop Biden from becoming president. Whether or not Trump was just stupid and believed dumb shit about like election fraud or whatever, or was actually trying to use the power of his office to intimidate a Secretary of State in order to get what he wants, doesn't matter to me. Point is that as president of the United States, during an election, you should not be getting involved in state politics, especially around things like vote counting. You shouldn't be saying, hey, you know, I've heard these things and it's going to be really bad for you if you don't do this thing. Get my drift? You don't act like a mob boss that's trying to sow plausible deniability so that you don't get in trouble for the things that you are clearly, to many people, doing. You just don't do it. You just don't do that sort of thing. And in knowing that, knowing what he said in Georgia, and knowing what happened, what transpired with the fake slate of electors, the pushes at other places such as Pennsylvania, in order to sow distrust in the entire electoral process, is why, just as Nikki stated just now, they're considering RICO charges in Georgia. Because it was a conspiracy. There was an effort, a concentrated effort, to establish a second slate of electors and in order to overturn the results of the election. And to me, it doesn't matter if he truly believed that he was robbed or if he was being just a authoritarian leaning dickbag trying to subvert democracy. The point is that he did these things. And that should be beyond the pale. What is acceptable in American politics. If Obama had done something similar, we would not be having Republicans sitting here to try to make excuses for it. In fact, when under Obama, when the FBI and other agencies were looking at people around Trump or talking to Russians, they said that this was a political witch hunt and they were out to get Trump to meddle in the elections. Despite the fact that none of that came into existence, into the public eye, until after the election. And Obama even went to the leaders of the Republican Party, leaders of both parties, rather. He talked to McConnell, he talked to, I think Kevin McCarthy was minority leader at the time in the House, Nancy Pelosi. He talked to the leaders and asked them to make a joint statement about Russian interference. And they said no. McConnell said no. And what happened? It wasn't revealed until after the election. So there you go. So if you are against anything happening around Obama, you should be against anything that's going on with Trump. Just should. Don't be a partisan. You shouldn't want the government, people in charge of government, doing these things.